Okay, welcome everyone. We're here to announce the release of a report from the workings of our task force. Copies are over against the wall if you don't have one right now. I'd urge you to get one. And also the announcement of a bill that will be listed shortly. So that's an outgrowth, obviously, of our task force's report. The title, Local Foods, Farms, and Jobs, Growing the Illinois Economy, sums up our efforts as a task force. I'll describe in a minute. And welcome all of you here to join us, and we look forward to your questions. We'll have about 20 minutes of presentation from people who've been involved in the process and supported the process and built it, and then we will open it up to you all to ask questions. I would like to mention that we do have a website available for this as well, and if you would like to get on the website and look at both the report and the bill there, the bill will be there. It's Family Farmed, F-A-M-I-L-Y, farmed, FARMED.org/foodfarmsjobs.html. Is that right, Jim? Good. And so I would like to give a little background to the report, but before I do that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Wes Jarrell. I'm a professor at the University of Illinois, soil scientist. I'm also a farmer. My wife and I milk goats, and we make cheese out of the milk. We send it to Urbana-Champaign in Chicago and a few other places. We also grow fruit. So I can definitely see the topic we're discussing today from a number of perspectives, and we're very fortunate to have Representative Julie Hamos accept the responsibility of taking forward a bill to the House in 2007, which passed the Food Farms and Jobs Act, became the Food Farms and Jobs Act, with encouragement from and immediate support from Debbie Hillman and Jim Brown and Jim Slama in particular. It's getting this thing off the ground. And it established a 32-member task force, which was an incredible representation from across the state geographically of people interested in the food system and more importantly, many who are involved in the food system: farmers, processors, retailers, restaurants, distribution folks, and developers, many other hats in the task force that helped immensely for us to get to this point today. We also, of course, had support from foundations and private donors who did help us fund the activities of Jim Brown and Debbie Hillman, who were co-coordinators for the task force events. So our job here is to present this and to, after 14 months almost of monthly meetings, many meetings in the last few months by the writing committee and by other subsets of the writing committee, to put together this report that you're seeing today and you have in your hands. Our committee first looked at what the extent of food consumption is in the state, and of course we found that it's over $40 billion. That's the big number to look at. 48 billion is the number we're using. This is how much is consumed in the state. We estimate that about 5% of that is actually produced directly in the state and given then directly to Illinois consumers. This, in a state with 25 million acres of beautiful ag land and 13 million people in total, seems like an opportunity, an incredible economic development opportunity to build from the ground up, building on what we have now in place to represent 10% by 2020, 20% after that. We could keep going up. There are all kinds of practices that we need to look at doing that can extend our season and pull up the people we need to do the job. So we set goals, and the goals are on page 18 of the report. I believe. Yes, thank you. Um, and these, we wanted to set some clear goals. As you can imagine, there was a lot of discussion. Many kinds of goals could have been selected. These were the ones we wanted to start with. To coordinate state institution food procurement policies to the point where we can build that up to 20% of total purchases. Very important one, we have to have food in the system, and it has to come from the farm to the consumer. We need a lot more people on the ground, from farmers to farm employees, laborers, and infrastructure entrepreneurs, all very entrepreneurial opportunity. But entrepreneurial not only for new people coming in, but also for current farmers, commodity farmers, others who are already working the land, and an opportunity to diversify their operations. And then an effort to increase the purchase of Illinois local food products by Illinois consumers to 10% of the total food expenditure. We're talking about 5% now, so looking at how fast can we double this contribution from Illinois-grown products. We identified a number of obstacles along the way because it felt like the obvious question is, why isn't there already this system in place if it's such a good idea? And there are a number of obstacles that we address in the report. I won't go through those in detail, but out of those obstacles to get to these goals, we have put together recommendations for action that we hope will extend beyond the state legislature and to all of those in the community who feel they would like to participate in this new and very exciting food system. We have a number of the task force members here now, and I would say that during the question and answer period and after that, where there's expertise that they might provide, we'll look to calling on them to provide that. So, but that was a huge benefit of this broad representation that we had, because we were able to get high quality input and connections from people who are out there in the front lines in many cases doing this right now. So we have that to look forward to. The bill itself is, I think, numbered 3990. Is that correct? And again, a very exciting set of prospects for us. It creates the council, which will be in some ways a continuation, in some ways different than the task force's activities, but very much taking it to another level in terms of tracking the food system, understanding what's happening out there. Interestingly enough, we don't keep very detailed track of how much comes from the state and how much is brought in from outside. With that council then, we'll be looking at many of the recommendations that we put forward, such as looking at the use of public lands. Land access is a big barrier to a lot of farmers. How can we get more land in their hands? There are a variety of ways we can do that. There's a lot of public land that might become available that we could change uses on, and a lot of this land could be near urban centers or towns, and that gets the food right into the food system very quickly. Another issue that was uncovered was the need for a lot more coordination and cross-communication among agencies, nonprofits, the whole food system, and so we're recommending that definitely be enhanced in the near future, and that will let our resources be used much more efficiently. I think certainly another major thrust would be to look at the institutions and find ways to encourage them to purchase more food locally. We have to have that food available, and it has to be at a reasonable price, and I think we're talking about a possible 10% bid preference, thank you, for the local foods, and that will be an incentive that will help bring it in, but it'll also build enterprises right in the community around the institution. So that's a big part of what we would like to do. certainly looking at the explicit training, education, and opportunities that we need for everyone at all levels in the food system are a prime target. We have near-term goals, 5,000 farmers, for example. We need a lot more farmers. You may be aware that in the new ag census that came out in 2007, in the last 5 years, there's been a 5% increase in farms in Illinois. Most of them, the caveat always comes, that most of them are small, but so are seeds. And those are the seeds that we can help build this system with. It shows a lot of interest, current market availability at that level. Now we need to build the markets. A very important aspect of the report, too, is that it's not only about small farms, farmers markets, very important components, but we need to produce this much food, we need medium-sized farms. We could even use some big farms that could produce high-quality, locally available food and contribute to the economic development of the rural landscape and as well as the urban landscape itself. So those are some of the prime objectives. Another one I'd mention is the need for coherent regulations across the board. Most of our recommendations are actually not so much an investment, but a change in the way we might be doing business. And what we're encouraging dramatically is that to advance this kind of system that we haven't seen for a while, and the last time we saw it, the rules were much different. But to look at the systems with a fresh set of eyes and say what really will protect public health and let us bring more people in. So if we want healthy, fresh, local food, it's important that we create systems, for example, in regulation, that let us do that, again, without risking public health. So with this, I think with that introduction, I'd like to introduce a series of presenters who will address the report and the bill. And first is Carolyn Hodge Brown, representing Governor Quinn. We've been very fortunate to have her join us this morning.
Thank you so much. And I'll just give a little background on my background. I was raised on a farm, and I think as all of us have watched agriculture change over the years, and I mean that goes back to even my great-grandfather who developed the John Brown watermelon in White County, Illinois. And we used to raise 80 acres of the best watermelons in the state of Illinois. Our enemies were the Posey County, Indiana watermelons. So when you look at your competition, it was Posey County, Indiana. That was the enemy. But just to tell you a little bit about watermelons, they have to grow in sandy soil. Those of you who've tried to raise them in your gardens and they don't grow, here's why. They have a taproot that's 10 feet long. And if it can't go down, it's going to stunt the growth of that melon. So that's why you can't generally grow melons in your garden. They have to be able to go down 10 feet. This taproot goes through sandy soil. So it really grows in soil that's what other things couldn't grow in. What has happened is I've watched the agricultural economy change. We now irrigate that sandy soil in White County, and we raise cucumbers and green beans and things you would have never thought of. And then we quit raising the 80 acres of watermelons that we grew. We irrigated that soil. But I've got a brother who wanted to go back to our family history and raise watermelons again, and he's raising them in the little, you know how irrigation goes in a circle? He's raising those melons in that little place on the corner where the circle doesn't hit. And you know, there's all kinds of little farming like that you can do. So now we have the John Brown watermelon stand is opened again in Carmi, right across where the Two Tonys restaurant used to be. But that's what I'm telling you, is we've watched farming change. We quit raising watermelons because irrigation changed how we grew things. But now we're back to the watermelons again. And we've also given up our 100 head of cows and our 100 sow farrowing unit because you can't compete with the big ones. Agriculture has just changed a lot. And I think one of the things about this bill is it's making us step back and look how we grow our things and how we provide the food that's needed for the residents of Illinois. You know, the ag economy is our biggest economy in the state. We've just looked at it as big, big, big and kind of forgotten that you can also do these little niches like the little corners in the fields where my brother's now growing the watermelons. Well, Governor Quinn does salute all of you for your work as they brought the local food, farms, and jobs report forward, and he's committed to help our local farmers produce what all Illinois residents can partake of. Illinois is unique as we have both a huge agriculture economy and we have huge urban areas. We can blend those two together, and I think that's one of the things this report will allow us to do. And we look forward to working together to enhance both our ag economy and providing what our city folks eat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. That was excellent. Next, very happy to introduce our representative from the Department of Ag. Department of Ag was our host department in the state for the task force, and Elaine Reeves, who's in the audience, was excellent staff support and guidance for us all, so we really appreciate that. Jared Thornley is here today to represent Director Jennings.
Good morning. The Department of Agriculture would like to thank Representative Hamos, Senator Collins, all the members of the committee and task force, and especially Department employee Elaine Reeves for all their hard work. The relationships that have been developed during these months are important to all of us who want to see more locally grown food on the tables throughout Illinois. The department strongly supports the concept outlined here today and will work with the sponsors and supporters to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jared, and thank you, the Department of Ag. Our third presenter now is our original sponsor and mentor and guiding light, Representative Julie Hamos from Evanston.
Thank you. As one of the city folks, I did just learn something new about watermelons and how they grow. And I am the proud sponsor of the original legislation and now the new legislation, but I first want to congratulate the task force, all the members of the task force, Wes for his leadership, Debbie Hillman, who's one of my constituents who brought the issue to me in the first place, Jim Braun, the people who really made this happen. The last year has been a very important part of this process. Building relationships is what the Department of Agriculture called it, and that's what we needed to do to bring the stakeholders around the table. And this report that was produced is now the blueprint for how we grow the Illinois economy with local fresh farms and local farm and food products and that are more so grown in Illinois. You know what Carolyn said, what she reminds us is that the agriculture is the state's largest economy. However, it's always important to remember that 95% of our food is exported from someplace else. So we are not growing food yet for Illinois consumers. And that's what this, as we said, this blueprint is going to really move forward and resolve. The task force itself is now going to become a new local food, farms, and job council under the bill that I will be introducing next Tuesday in the Agriculture Committee. House Amendment number 1 to House Bill 3990 will actually do two important things. One is to set forth some procurement goals for local farm or food products, which will set into state statute what you heard about, some of the numbers that appear in the report. And these will be goals set forth for state institutions as they make their food purchases. So we've set forward some goals for the next 10 years. We also have some bid preferences that will make it really happen. And then the second main component of this bill is to create a new state-sponsored not-for-profit, which is called the Illinois Local Food, Farms, and Jobs Council. And this will, again, institutionalize the work that's already begun. It will put in place a 35-member board of directors with a long list of responsibilities, all of it about making this happen and overcoming the obstacles that actually now have been identified one by one. It's going to take that kind of a sustained long-term effort. So the not-for-profit is being created and appointed by the governor, so we see a very close relationship between the state agencies that all need to be players and to be part of this, as well as farmers, advocacy organizations, a whole group all outlined in the bill about who the stakeholders really are for this effort as we tackle this next group of challenges. So it's a very exciting moment in Illinois, I think, when we now have a blueprint in front of us in how we move forward and how we're going to take this blueprint and grow the Illinois economy. This is really about revitalizing urban and rural neighborhoods and communities, and it's also about providing access to fresh local foods. So it's very exciting to be standing here with this group, and I look forward to many more years of working together. Thank you.
You can see a big part of our inspiration there. So our next presenter was not actually a member of the task force, but his area was something that I think we kind of skirted around the edges of any number of times. But now it looks like in the future this will be a much more central theme as we move forward. So with that, I'd like to introduce Hiro Tameling, who's the Director of the Office of Security and Emergency Preparedness in the Department of Human Services.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for inviting us to participate. On behalf of Secretary Adams, I also want to thank Governor Quinn's office and Carolyn Brown Hodge, Representative Hamos, Senator Collins for their leadership on this issue, as well as Jim Slama, who I met 4 or 5 years ago already, and he at that time tried to talk me into getting involved, and we were buried with some other things. And specifically Jim Brown for following up on that. Also would like to acknowledge Penny Roth's contribution from the Department of Human Services. Her hard work on the task force has made it easier for all of us, I think. Early morning, April 18th, 2008, chimneys crumbled and the earth rumbled from Memphis to Michigan. I don't know if you all remember that. The 5.4 quake was an event that not many of us had anticipated happening anytime soon anyway. Fortunately, it didn't result in a loss of life. But imagine for a minute if this had been a 5.7 or a 5.8 quake. More than chimneys would have crumbled. A good portion of the state's transportation infrastructure in the south and in the central part of the state probably would have been impacted severely. And more than half of the food that we consume as Illinois residents would not have been able to reach us because it comes from outside of Illinois borders. Events such as these, whether man-made, natural, in-state or out-of-state, obviously impact our food distribution systems greatly. The ability to bring food in from other areas would be severely hampered. The security and safety and well-being of Illinois residents, we believe, is directly tied to the security of our food supply and the sources that we have. It's therefore prudent, I think, to ensure both access as well as availability to local food sources as much as possible. Locally grown foods will help fulfill this critical need during an emergency and provide us much needed sustainability and preparedness in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last two presenters were from the task force, and I think I'm going to ask Chuck if he would speak first. And I should introduce Chuck. Chuck Paprocki is one of our Southern Illinois representatives and also manages a farm in Anna. Thank you.
He's probably eating one of our watermelons.
I've tried to grow them in Southern Illinois, not too well, actually. Hello, my name is Chuck Paprocki. I manage Davenport Farm in Anna, Illinois. We're a small organic farm. We're a farm that's a part of a community of about 100 people. And we have about 4 acres of land, and we probably provide about 30% of the community's needs, food needs. We have chickens and and eggs and vegetables and fruit trees and bees, and we grow our own seeds and that sort of thing. So we're trying to look at what it takes to have sustainable living skills so that families and small communities can meet their own basic needs at a higher level. We can't help notice that Illinois, like many states, is in dire financial straits. I think we can all admit that. Yet we've got tens of billions of dollars leaving the state every year buying food. And when you look at the USDA statistics, and it all gets down to it, our farm cash receipts is a little under $9 billion, and about $2 billion of that is food. So even if we consumed all of the food that we eat in Illinois, we're still only consuming 4%, or Illinois only produces 4% of the food that we eat. In southern Illinois, we've got some of the poorest counties in the state, and we're in a healthcare nightmare down there just because of diet-related diseases. We know from our farm that we can grow 3 plantings a year. We have got a spring garden, we've got a fall garden, and we have a winter garden. We plant food in big greenhouses that will take us through the winter, and we don't use any fossil fuels. Just put the food right in the ground, cover it with some heat, and greens will take a temperature down to the low 20s. So we know that farmers can produce food here and do it year-round. I also know that there's a lot of farmers down there, small farmers, young farmers, that don't have a chance to be farmers, or can't make a go of it. But I know that if they had a chance, they would like to get into food production. We have a lot of prisons in southern Illinois, and there's about 13,000 prisoners sitting in southern Illinois. If those prisons would make it possible for them to buy food from local farmers, that would be a tremendous boon, and begin to renovate and rejuvenate our local towns and economies. So I think this report points out some very valuable methods and steps to rejuvenate the Illinois economy, and I hope you read it and take it seriously and join our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, for showing us what some of the implications of this are in more concrete and specific terms, I think. Our final presenter is Mr. Keith Boland, who's president of the American Corn Growers and Farms in Bureau County.
Good morning, everyone. I've been asked to talk very briefly for a couple minutes of just possibly why farmers in Illinois should look at this, why we should care about local foods, and why we might want to get involved in this. And I've looked at what has happened in agriculture in rural Illinois and rural America, and it's not just in southern Illinois and Chuck's backyard, but it's in northwestern Illinois and Bureau County, where the lands are some of the best in the world, and we have some of the most vibrant lands, and Illinois should be very proud of that. And we should be very proud of our commodity production of corn and soybeans, hogs, and cattle. But in 1978, when my wife and I started farming, as young teenagers actually, we entered agriculture through high sweat equity and low capital. That was the hog business. And I got involved with this local food because of Jim Brown and other people like Jim, and looked at it and said, this is a way for that young 20 and 25-year-old couple to enter with low capital and high sweat equity. And they can grow it right along with their bankers. Whether it's farm credit, your community banker, or a regional banker, this is something to me, and my dad worked for Farm Credit. What is now Farm Credit was PCA in the 40s and 50s. My dad would be excited about this, because this is where young people can enter. It's an entry-level position type deal, and you can grow. You can grow right along with your land and your production, and it's exciting to me. And I think this is something that commodity producers ought to look at, for the next generation. We have a term in agriculture, is your farm a terminal farm? And I had to acknowledge that quite possibly our farm was. And my grandfather farmed the part of what is the Adlai Stevenson farm. And to look at that and say maybe it's a terminal farm, you know what, it doesn't have to be. And this is a way to enter low capital and low risk. But I want to encourage the press, the media, and the legislature to look at this bill that's being proposed and look at this as another tool in the chest of diversification of agriculture, and that is our strength, is diversification. And thank you for everybody in the audience. If I might, would the folks who were on this and participated on this stand, if you folks who have worked on this, the people in the audience who have worked on this, those people deserve a clap just as long as us. Thank you so much.
I think you can see by now why this was such a successful team effort. A lot of complementarity. With that, I'd open it up for questions. Yes.
We have two kinds of goals that are spelled out in the bill, but as Wes said, the report itself has other goals. So the goals in the bill have to do with state-operated agencies. What we're saying is that by the year 2020, 10% of their food purchases will be from local food or food products. We have a second goal in there, which has to do with not state facilities, but those entities that are funded in part or in whole by state dollars. And those would include, for example, public schools, child care facilities, after-school programs. Their goal is 10% by the year 2020. This will, of course, require benchmarking and tracking. And what we also include is a bid procurement preference to make it really possible in case some of the bids that come in are slightly higher than the lowest possible bid. Now, the report itself has some other goals, and that's the reason, in part, to set up the council and institutionalize it, because the council itself will be taking this report, again, as a blueprint for moving forward, and will analyze all the different ways to meet these goals and to remove the obstacles that stand in the way.
You're talking a lot about new farmers and reconstituting land. How will this affect the average farmer? Will it affect their scale of production? Will it affect what kind of crops they grow? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. The current farm community, yeah, that's a very important point. We have, as I think I mentioned, about 25 million acres of ag land. About 20 million of that is in corn and soybeans. And if you look at production, typical production off of vegetables and fruits and some of the other intensive systems we're talking about, 1 million acres of that would do incredible things. It's a lot more work per acre, I would say, a lot of sweat equity like Keith was talking about, but you could do an enormous amount with 5% or less of the current prime ag land. And then a lot of these practices are quite suitable and some even better on the more marginal lands. So in terms of land impact, it would be very small. So it's not, shouldn't be competitive in the least with conventional farming as it's now practiced, but will give those farmers as well as everyone else alternative markets and opportunities in the landscape.
Will they have to learn new different techniques?
Yes, and there will be different equipment, there'll be different supplies. There needs to be this very deep and broad education about how you grow it, but also how you market it, how you preserve it, practice it. There should be a lot of opportunities for appropriate scaled equipment. We know companies are looking at this now, smaller scale equipment that can be very efficient and appropriate on these kinds of enterprises. So we think there's a lot, the rejuvenization of a number of these industries would permeate the whole food system development. Does anybody else here have a follow-on for that?
Well, I think in terms of what's going to have to be new and different is that we're giving the local food council the responsibility also to facilitate the building of infrastructure, which includes aggregation, processing, storage, packaging, and distribution facilities that may be necessary to move local farm and food products to local and other markets. So those were one of the obstacles that were identified, is that we need a way to get from the farm to the consumer. And I think that needs to all be looked at and to create a whole system for really doing that.
Where would the funding come from then?
Well, long term, there is going to have to be a funding plan as part of this. And again, this is not being requested this year, especially in a very difficult budget season. But I think the reason we are creating a separate not-for-profit is so that they can apply for and receive funding from multiple sources. Some of that will be from federal government. Some of that will be by creating a market-based production system. So I think this is going to be an exciting set of next steps that have not been plotted out yet, but that's exactly the reason for creating a food council that will sit and work on those and really focus in on what needs to be done.
My question is a follow-up to the comment that Chuck had made, but I'll open up the question to all of you and all of you. Chuck, you had said that young farmers down in southern Illinois can't make a go of it right now, and I see the farmers as really where the rubber meets the road. I think it's great that we've got a plan in place to move forward by looking back to local production, at local production, and we've got, it looks like, avenues to bring it into the market. But how do local farmers, are they excited about this? Do you see interest, and is there an obstacle right there on the farm itself to move back toward food production, smaller scale food production?
I think there are a few obstacles. One is knowledge. Just to know how to grow food is something. Every crop is different, and you have to know its idiosyncrasies and the soil requirements and so forth. Equipment is an obstacle. There's not a lot of small-scale equipment that you can buy. We have a farm-all, an old farm-all, and farmers used to use it all of the time to grow several acres of food, but they don't make them anymore. So that's an industry we could start in Illinois. The way I see it is, if all of this money is leaving the state, that is money in our pocket. We need to figure out a way to transition, set up the controls and incentives to begin to keep this money in state. And part of that is going to have to be training for farmers, either through ag extension or junior colleges or however. But it does take an education to do it, or you just learn through your experiences,
So it's education that's holding the young farmers back right now?
And I would add, it's education, but in addition to that, they need to feel secure that there is an ongoing steady market. And what we're really creating through this process that we have now in place is, in fact, a market that assures that some portion of state facilities will be buying local foods, and secondly, setting goals and moving toward those goals. Thirdly, eliminating the barriers that are keeping that from happening. And that's all a very important part of the overall mix of what needs to happen. What we do know is that there's very strong interest on the part of consumers to buy local farm and food products. The restaurants are reporting that they don't have enough access to this kind of food. And we do know that it's also about revitalizing communities. So it all fits. It just needs sustained effort to make it happen.
I'll just say one word to follow up on those excellent comments, and that is that for the first time, our students at U of I have agitated to start a student farm that would feed food into our campus food system. And those are new farmers, new parts of the food system. They may be chefs, they may be retailers in the long run, but they're getting hands-on experience with this. And we also have programs already through the state, like Farm Beginnings, that are targeting this particular population of new and upcoming farmers. So there's things happening now, but there's a lot of opportunity for a lot more to happen. Other questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And keep us informed about your thoughts. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks. Good job.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.